Okay, today I am here with Terran. And Terran, I'm just going to start off by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Alright, I'm Terran Morrow. I am 5'10". I'm a donor. Hazel eyes. I have 9.5 fingers.
9.5?
You ever seen this thing?
Oh, I
Yeah.
never noticed that.
Yeah, most people don't. I like playing music. I like doing art of multiple kinds, dance.
You just got a degree recently, didn't you?
Yes, I got a degree in anthropology and art design as well. What else do I say?
What do you want to say about your band? That's a pretty cool thing, huh?
Okay. It's heavy metal / screamo. Most people don't tend to like that kind of music, but I do. It's
What's the
awesome.
name? What's the name of it?
It is named To Cross an Angel.
Okay.
For those who don't know, it's cross not as in to put them up on a cross, if you will. Cross as in anger. Yeah.
Okay. And you got some music out there? Or?
Oh, sure, yeah. On YouTube, search to Cross an Angel. There's multiple YouTube videos. There's, you know... I'm gonna leave it there.
Okay. And you're involved with another band, aren't you?
I am involved with other bands. See, I'm on the spot. I'm all forgetting everything. Yes, Old Man Down. I am the drummer for said band in that one. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right. So, what was your childhood like in relation to faith? Were you brought up going to church, or?
It is a yes and no question.
Okay.
My mother and father at a young age split up. Father was in the Air Force, so he moved around a lot. When I was with my father's side, I was being brought up in faith. When I was on my mother's side, no.
Okay. What kind of church were you going to?
Well, when my father would bring me to church, it was a variety of different ones. I don't know if that's because when I was with him we were in different places via him being in the Air Force, or if he wasn't sure what churches would work for him. That I can't answer. But I did catch a difference in Catholicism versus Christianity through that. That is as much as I can say, because that's all I remember.
Okay. Did you have a sense of any kind of personal relationship with God when you were growing up, or was it?
Now, when you say personal, do you mean me trying to communicate or something like that?
Yeah,
or?
well, just kind of, was it a personal thing to you, or did it just more feel like some...
automatic, kind of one of those things, oh, you just do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was... when it came to anything, prayer or trying to think like this, well, it's what people do.
Okay.
No personal connection there outside.
Okay.
Of that.
Were you concerning yourself with trying to live a godly life in any way? Or?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely.
I didn't care.
Okay. All right.
I mean, any rules that would behoove me would just be my mom or dad mad. Nothing else.
Okay.
No other stakes, if you will, involved.
Okay. All right. So would you say you got pretty rebellious in your life at some point?
Yes, I would. Well, I definitely in my teens were rebellious, as I assume most are. But I think I'm not sure if that transpired out of rebelling against God or anything like that, because also things in my childhood led me to go into foster care. And so I was there a lot of my mid-teenage age. And then I was adopted with foster parents after that, if you will. And that's where I guess if any typical rebellion had occurred in that phase of my life, in my foster care phase. Prior to that, there was still, I think, rebellion, but I think that was outlash of an unstable and unhealthy home. Okay. Yeah, that's probably the...
So when you were going through that part of your life, and, you know, through that whole process of being in foster care and eventually being adopted and stuff like that, did any of that have any effect on how you saw God?
Yes, it probably had the biggest effect on how I seen Jesus and God. My foster parents, Chuck and Kelly Skillings, they were active churchgoers, though obviously not as you know necessary for worship in Jesus and his yeah. But every Sunday they would ask me, "Hey, Terran, you want to come to church with us?" And of course I'm like, "No, I want to stay here and play video games. It's lame. I'm not gonna go do that." And it was really nice because they weren't actually pushy about it. They would every Sunday ask, and if I said no, they just left it and walked. And after a while, that turned into, "Hey, Terran, you want to go?" And it's like, "Yeah, I'll go because I feel guilty because I love you guys and I want you to be happy with me, in a sense." And while there, there's oh man, it still gets me. Really cute girl from school, and I didn't know she went there. Her name was Becky Durham, and this is how God works in such unique ways. But it's sad that it's because of a girl I liked, but it's true. So now that I see Becky Durham's going to church there with my parents, I'm like, I gotta go to church every weekend. I gotta get getting good with this girl, right? Yeah. So every weekend after that, they're like, "Oh, what's the big turnaround?" I'm like, "Oh no, let's just figure it out, whatever." Now I'm sure they actually knew, but so after a while, she's like, "Hey, you want to go to the youth group after church?" And I'm thinking, I already did church once. It's kind of boring. But of course, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go because I think she's really cute, and yeah. So I go there, and in youth group, I met up with other people. Youth pastor named Jim Schwartz, and I don't know what it was, but that second, I want to say church day, but it was at the youth group segment. Something about the sermon that he taught, because first off, rather than, I guess, reading, and I say this in the most gentle way, straight out of the Bible for a teen, he just speaking in blatant terms, even saying casual, like, "Cool, yeah, dude," or whatever, or something like that. That is what finally got me to understand. And it's not like I didn't hear it before, but like, hear it in a connective way. See, it sounds so strange just to say it like that, but it's true. In a connective way.
A way of speaking that related to you, maybe?
Thank you. Yeah, that is exactly what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And it started getting me thinking. And I'm like, well, okay, so God, I think God's there. I'm not sure, Well, how do I know? So now I have more questions. Next week, I didn't go to the pastor of the church. I kept going to Jim because I felt, probably because I felt the connectiveness of how he was saying it to me. What was most likely it. And I asked, okay, so how do you know God's real? You know, how? And he's like, well, it you know, it's even says in the Bible, and it's true, it's faith-based. You know, it's a system based off of faith, of believing. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool and all, and that's fine. I don't mind guidelines of you know, but I gotta have some kind of proof, you know? And he's like, well, what proof are you looking for? I guess I'm looking for some kind of science that supports it, or, you know, something. And he's like, I can give you some scientific evidence. And I'm like, really? I highly doubt that. It's like, let's go over to my house after this. So we go through the whole youth thing and then walk over to his house. And he pulls out a bunch of this, like, videos of how God, how science proves God. First of all, how our universe could exist in the first place is so finitely tuned that it had to have been planned. Okay? It's like, okay, so there's one thing. Well, evolution. Have you looked at evolution? I'm like, yeah, they teach it in school and whatever, you know. Well, what are the theories behind it, you know? Well, what is it? Survival of the fittest. I'm going to say movement, but that's not the term, where it's spreading over and thousands of years, you know, due to evolution. And then he pulls out this wonderful animal, very out there kind of thought, the giraffe. Not really out there, but I'm thinking like, well, what's so unique about this? And he's like, and of course this video of it and research behind it. These scientists are talking about they're talking about it. Well, so if evolution was true, well, let's assume they are. And it starts off, I'm like, okay. Well, over thousands of years, the giraffe has these really interesting things where it has almost like a bucket in its neck, then another bucket, and it keeps closing off. So the amount of pressure from blood pushing up to its brain to get, well, brain to the blood to the brain. I'm like, okay. Well, over a certain couple thousands of years, it develops a gap of height of neck length, and then it reaches a point where there's too much pressure because there's nothing stopping it, and it explodes its brain. Well, then it would die. Well, then there's no evolution because all of them would die. So then something had to develop the pressure points to stop it to make the next channel, right? Yeah. So what would do that? I guess I'm not sure. Well, he would have to have a certain amount of pressure to kill it. So that in itself is a paradox. But let's go that. Maybe that didn't develop first. Well, let's say it bends down to take a drink after it developed these channels. Well, then it runs into another problem because, well, the amount of blood that's being pushed up is by so much amount of force to the brain. What's going to happen when it shoots back the other way? It has the same channels going the other way, which means it had to do it twice. How is that possible at the same time? Well, maybe that didn't evolve first. So let's go back. Well, it lifts up its head. Now it has another issue. Well, all that force coming down got to go somewhere, and it goes directly where? The heart. Well, without something to slow it down and stop it completely, it would give it a heart attack immediately. So it couldn't develop over 1,000 years. Again, just like the other four things, so it would die. Everything about this creature says it can't exist. And I understand I'm rambling on longer here, and I apologize.
Nope, no problem.
There was numerous other animals like this. This one is just the only one that I have memorized, probably because it was the first one I got exposed to. And it got me thinking more. I was like, wow, that is solid evidence, you know. And I'm blown away by everything I'm hearing. I'm like, okay, well, what about diseases? And it talks in that back and forth. So now, I kind of have no excuse of no proof. And I started thinking about, well, is God real? Well, now comes now I'm still talking to him during this whole time, but also my dad, because he's there in the meantime. Foster dad, I apologize. I have another dad. And questions, go up to him at night and talk and, you know, whatever. And he, I asked him, okay, so how do you think? How do you know God exists? I got this evidence and it's like, I'm on board this faith thing. I mean, how do I do that? He's like, well, obviously, faith is more of a you thing. I can't tell you how to do that. That's, on you. And I'm like, that makes sense. So, why do you have faith, Chuck? And he looks down at me and he says, well, do you see everything I have? Yeah. Got a house? Yeah. You see how smart I am, right? Not that smart, Dad. And he laughs. It's like, yeah, I'm really not. See my beautiful wife, blah, blah, blah. I have all this stuff. How do you think that happened? I was like, you working hard? I don't work nearly as hard as I probably should. I keep getting lucky. Now, there's a certain amount of time that luck comes along that it can't just be luck when it starts happening over and over and over. Now, that's not to say, I'm obviously taking on his words here, that's not to say my life is perfect, and I still have debt and things like that, but I still have, at the last second, when something rushes in that saves something that we thought we were going to lose the house or lose you kids, that kind of luck, where it's always a swish at the last second of the belt, that says to me, that's where my faith comes from. And even though it started out sounding a lot like evidence, if you will, more hearsay evidence, but evidence from his point of view, when he last said that, where it kept happening at the worst area, where it would save everything, I was like, okay. I started paying attention to him and other situations. And then that's when I started saying, all right, God. So, I believe you're out there. But you're interested in me, sure. It probably isn't the best or whatever. But I believe you're out there now. And as I'm talking with him, because now I'm going to church and I'm not necessarily ignoring what I'm hearing up at church now, but I can't wait to actually get to youth group, because Jim can really talk about awesome stuff. Not the same old boring, let's go to church and talk about, what Jesus did on the cross, all that boring stuff. Yeah, he did this great thing, cool, but what about all the other cool things out there? I'm sorry. So, I'm talking to Jim and about these, interesting faith ideas. I'm like, okay, I believe that he's out there and stuff like that. And how do I know he listens to me or whatever? And he's like, well, again, the faith idea. That's getting over that hurdle. he's like, just keep talking to him and you'll start seeing more. And I kind of already started picking up on some things of, God taking care of me. And a couple things came into mind as I started pondering. God's always there, how's God? You don't always see him, he always listens. I don't hear him, blah, 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 physically in my ear. Well, my entire I ran into a bunch of people at school. And it's high school, other schools, whatever. Talking about they didn't grow up even exposed to church. I was like, what? Everybody has. Like, everyone I knew growing up at least went to church a couple times. It's like, no, that's weird. And then I started thinking, I'd been back and forth multiple places. But whether my dad, my mom, my grandparents, multiple foster things, and almost all of them, except my mom, was always at a church or some exposure to that. Even in the foster care system. And I was like, that's a little too coincident, too lucky, if you will, exposure. Well, then I talked to some other people that were in foster care. Even not only that, most of them actually thought it was weird that they had advisors or whatever that would take the kids to church. They're like, no, that's not a thing. I'm like, what? I thought that was normal. And I started thinking about what Chuck said. The too many coincidences in my life. Multitudes of this, what I thought was normality. And God, did you really do that to try and really keep just, come on, Terran, I'm right here, buddy, over here. I'm like, no, you couldn't, did you? You know? And finally, I'm like, he had to have. That's so weird. And then I start. I went to like an Acquire the Fire thing, a giant to get together down in the cities of God's exposure, how He works in our lives, and applying that to myself, and started thinking back to Becky. Why did it? At this time, by the way, I apologize, and I don't know where the transition exactly was during this process, but it did change from "Are you there?" to "Holy crap, you clearly are," if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I apologize for that. Mm-hmm. But then later on, in my later teens, I'm looking back to, Frank, if I didn't have this giant, huge crush on Becky, I never would have went to church with my parents. I never would, all these little things. And then I talked to Becky later, of course. I'm like, when did you start going to church there? Because I talked to her kind of about it. She knew at this point. And she's like, actually, no, that was the first day that we went there. I was like, no way! So a lot more of these lucky coincidences, similar to what my dad had told me. And the final turning point where I can say that I'm sure before this I truly knew God existed, but that solidified it was we went to this more evangelical church trying it out once. My parents were trying it out once, and they and this one day came by, and I'm sorry. The pastor started speaking a different language. And I'm like, what? This is weird. Excuse me, I'm burping. And she's praying in between, and then she'd go into this other language and then pray. And finally, in the middle of the sermon, I just raised my hand. Good. Because one thing about me, which I know you're no stranger to, but camera-wise, don't know. If there's something I really don't know in church, I will raise my hand and ask, what does that mean? And I did, and I think it was a she though, but that's vague. But because it was a guy and a girl husband, but whichever one it was, I think it was the one pastor though. Looks down at me and she goes, it's my prayer language. I'm like, prayer language? What's that? She's like, well. God sometimes gifts these gifts to people of faith, and it's just something for me to connect with Him intimately with. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, well, how do I? Sounds kind of cool. How do I get one of those? And literally what I said. She goes, I mean, you could pray about it, or that's really all she said. I'm like, can we pray about it? And she's like, sure, I guess. So everybody in the congregation stood in a circle. I stood in the center. And actually, and then she's like, well, if anyone else wants prayer over the prayer language while we're doing this, you can step in too. So actually my mom did also, which was kind of cool. My foster mom, but my mom. And two other people. And they step in and they put their hands on me and they just start praying. And out of nowhere, I started speaking in tongues. And it was crazy. Like, I heard a voice in my head. I was speaking some language. And the lady, the pastor started, prophesying over me. Which at the time, when she was saying it, like so many things were going on, I thought she was really just saying kind words and things, but at the same time, like my mouth is just gibbering this thing. It's separate from my brain. It's like, what is going on here? This is nuts, and I mean, and it feels wonderful and the most amazing thing ever. And then she says something that no one knew. My parents didn't know it about me. I didn't say it to anybody. It's something I thought all the time. About it was about playing music specifically, and doing everything I could in my power to make that who I am. And she says, which now that I know, because reading in Acts, it was a prophecy. It was God speaking to me through her, and because she was blown away by it, that whole experience. But I'll say that at the very end here, a little more detail. But she says, or if you will, God said to me, it's like, Terran, be in the now. I don't want you to think about the future. I want you here with those around you. Because when you're sitting down playing your guitar, you're doing everything you can to stop the world. And I always thought that I'm just trying to get rid of everything I don't want. And I didn't say that to my parents and whatever. And I'm sure they thought it was an escape for me, but not like that. And she said that, and exactly how I say it in my head all the time at this time. And I'm like, oh my God, this is, wow. At the end of it, not unsure, well, I guess partially unsure of the experience as well, of this thing I didn't even know existed in the world. We spent longer afterwards, talking about it with because I wasn't the only one speaking in tongues too, which was actually kind of cool. My mom did too, and one of the ladies, and she went to each of them too, saying a prophecy over them as well. And afterwards, they sat down with this thing that happened. You can read about it here and what it means, and you don't need to speak in tongues to be a Christian and stuff like that. But it's just something for everything I said earlier. But from that moment on, it's like, how did this supernatural thing happen to me, of all things? And I already believed, but like, that experience had taken it from I believe to, okay, these giant miracles that happen in the Bible, they're not just people watching and unsure because they're in the past of not sure of, they're thinking from their point of view rather than probably a fact of what happened. No, if that happened now, today, to me, when I say to me, I mean at the time frame, it clearly happened then, at that time, to them. And again, there's no... It's hard to explain without sound like a fool just off of faith, but it is what it is. It is there, and it did happen, and yeah, I don't know what else to say now.
Okay. So obviously that was a pivotal changing moment in your life there. So
at that point.
So how has your life changed since then?
Since then. Well, soon after that, I was in college by myself. And even though I believed in God and stuff, that would be a falling away point, as I was no longer under parent rule, if you will, watching over my shoulder, and I was responsible for myself. So I did a lot of alcohol, a lot of drugs, marijuana, stuff like that. And that caused me to drop out of college because of that. Until I had a heart attack from the amount of drugs I was putting in my system. And when I had that...
How old were you at this time?
At this time I was probably about 19/20, around right on that cusp area.
Okay.
So when I had my heart attack, towards the end of it, I remember seeing a blackening. My eyes just blackening into nothingness, and I was feeling pain and strenuousness, and finally it went to where I could only see black. And then I saw this, and you hear this all the time, but it's so true. Bright light, almost like at the end of a tunnel. But it was almost like this teeny pinhole of a bright light, and it just, if you could shoot the most powerful light through it, where it would shine little flurries out. And then it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and this overwhelming light. And I was feeling pain during this whole thing, like a lot of pain, and less and whatever. I should also say during this, what I know now what the sound was, when I was under the influence, I did not. I heard this constant, and now I know it was the beeping thing on the monitor, my heart monitor. And the more pain I felt, the more it would quicken up, until finally the, which now I know it was me flatlining. It was soon after I heard that white light encompassed me, and all the pain I had, I felt nothing but love and peace and no pain whatsoever. And as soon as that came in, this warm feeling came over me, I heard something. Not the beeping. I heard people talking. I think it was the doctor. I could be a nurse or whatever, but talking to my mom, saying, if he doesn't wake up, we're going to have to fly him to Duluth because he's not waking up. Or Minneapolis. One of the two. And as I heard that, I came back, and I see a lady standing over with, I'm assuming they're the defibrillators or whatever, or something. It didn't look like it did on TV, and she's over, and I don't know if she's charging it or if she given up or whatever, because I guess they were shocking me back to life. And I said, "How's it going?" And she turns around, looks at me, it's like, and yells for the others, and they come and is like, "Oh, you're awake," and blah blah blah. I'm like, "Yeah," and then I was really tired, strenuous, so or from all the strain I was under. I also seen that I had multiple handcuffs on me because I was apparently doing bad things as well when I was under the influence without knowing it. But that was another one of those things that was clearly God. After they told me, okay, you technically died for about a minute. And then now knowing, like, oh wow, I mean, and they said they were they didn't think I was going to make it. They were probably going to try what they could to fly me again. I don't remember which place and for what reason, because that's all vague in my mind. But again, it shocked me. It's like, wow, okay, well, thank you, Jesus. But and then this other thing, when I was going to church at Cross Hill, I forgot the guy's name, but another guy that had a heart attack I met there, he said he had a heart attack and he saw nothing. And that he just got cold in darkness. And whether he knew it or not only did that shock me, but also feel awesome at, again, one of those things about Jesus. And obviously I told him my side of the story. Maybe that was another one of those cool kinks on how God makes people meet each other to learn from one another, or etc. But how did that, after that said point, I knew I didn't want to be that way after that heart attack, that initial. When I came back to, I knew it was because I felt lonely. I just wanted, and this sounds bad, attention from anybody. Not necessarily like sexual boyfriend-girlfriend attention, just closeness of some kind. And I realized that closeness was missing, and I've always been more introverted in my entire life. Though people don't see me as that, but it really is true. I found out what made me feel so wholesome before was God in my high school years. And I didn't realize it before, but I thought back, like every single time I felt loved and excited, he was involved in some way. even if I was just out on a walk by myself. I really wasn't by myself, obviously, because God's with you. But like just enjoying nature and his creations. And that's when, so waking up from that heart attack gave me that realization that is really what drove me to this extreme, and that I didn't want to be that way anymore. So from that day on, I did everything I could to stay away from drugs. Up until recently, alcohol. And going out to just bad places just because I want some socialization of connectiveness. And once I cut that off, I felt better. And then when I started going back to church and connecting with, my goal wasn't just to, and I realize this now, my goal was to connect with the church, but in my mind, church back then was just go to this place and talk about God. It wasn't just trying to fellowship with them or something. Does that make sense? Okay. I started going back to church to hang out with others like-minded individuals, which now I know is church. And when I started feeling great again. And then I'm like thinking, okay, God, I'm actually going to try listening to you as this goes on to see where it goes. And I heard him say multiple things to me. One, I wanted to just be in a band my entire life. That was my goals. But God said, I don't want you to be in a... Well, he does want me to be in a band, but in a different way. I want you to be in a worship team. I want you to lead a youth group. I want you to pastor teens. And again, this will sound weird. I don't want those things. But as I started doing some of those things, and this is still continuing to this day, mind you. This is still something going on, working in me. These are still words he says to me, sometimes. I have achieved some of them. For instance, I have been in a worship band, if you will, and technically a couple of them, just in different ways, but still worshiping God. And whether it's at church or rocking with other band members of various groups, I felt so much more fulfillment in that. And knowing that I'm doing it for God, even if others don't like it. Even if... Well, that's really it. Even if they don't like it, like, just being able to even connect with one person, 2 people, 3 people who like it. Anything like that has given me much more fulfillment in my heart than ever trying to be this awesome secular rocker character that I wanted. And then nextly, teenagers. Talking with teenagers and hanging out with teenagers, it hasn't happened yet, but he's still speaking to me to try and start a youth group. And it's something that terrifies me because I didn't think I liked kids. But it's funny how God works things in your life multiple times, and then you start realizing, oh, maybe I do like doing this. And it's like, okay, I'm going to try and do this as best as I can as it starts coming on. And just those things that he's done in my life where he said, oh, I know this is what you want, but this is what I want from you. I didn't realize because I'm stubborn and sinful, if I just listened then, I'd have felt so much more content with, and be like, yes, God, you're clearly right. Clearly he's right, he's God. That's what I want with my life. Not what I think I want with my life. Paradoxical, but true. It's not paradoxical. Anyhow, again, I'm probably ranting or raving. Focus me. What should I talk about next? Or maybe
tell us how your wife came into the picture.
So, about a year after my heart attack, I wanted to start a band But as I said before, I wanted to, rather than just do it more secularly, I wanted to focus in and try to do it for God. And I talked to my brother, who was just getting out of the Air Force at the time, and he's like, yeah, I want to start a band with you. And I was like, I'll play drums, because he started doing some drumming. I was playing guitar. And he's like, I'll talk around. I obviously, you probably know there's not a lot of people up in Ely. I'll see what I can do, because I was living in Ely at the time. Calls me back up later. He's like, I got a couple people in mind. Someone to play bass and maybe someone to do vocals. No second guitarist yet. I'm like, oh, okay. He's like, well, why don't we go meet him? And so he drives me to Ely, picks me up, and drive all the way down to Virginia here. And we go to the mall, and he's like, we're going to go meet up with Lana. And she's this really cool girl I went to high school with. And I was like, oh, high school with. Was you ever any of the ones you dated? She's like, I tried to. I was like, oh, okay, whatever. So we go to meet her, and she's working at Claire's, and I walk in, and he's like, hey, Lana, this is my little brother I was talking about, Terran. She goes, oh, pleased to meet you. I've heard multiple stories. And I say, I don't know a lot about you, but cool. And she looks at me like, all right. And I look at her, and I look at Denver, and I'm like, I'm going to go. Because I was bored, and I wanted to go play the piano in the other room. Well, we leave. Or, no, this is awful, but it's still true, but it is awful. Oh, no, it's not awful. Not yet. When I first met, not yet, I'm sorry. When I first met her, though, after it's like, oh, I'm getting bored here, I actually said to myself, she's not overly cute. She's not underly cute. She's edgy, though. That's kind of cool. I wonder if I'm going to marry her. Don't say that, Terran. It's going to happen. And it's like, yeah, don't say that. That's going to happen then for some reason. I don't know why you feel it. Why are you saying that, Terran? And it's hilarious, because now I married her. And that was the first thing I thought when I seen her, which is hilarious. The other bassist came into play later, but we started, doing music together. She was doing vocals, and I was doing guitar, and we'd play a bunch. And afterwards, I would call her names because I still wasn't sure. Didn't know how to still work with emotions very well, unfortunately. And I would call her bad names, like my fat friend and stuff. And no, she's not let that go. But it is what it is. We were hanging out one night, and I liked her because, she was similar to me. She liked music and art and a whole bunch of things similarly. When we started this band, I was trying to do it Christian, but my brother informed me we wouldn't find enough people that way. I was young and stupid, and I shouldn't have listened to him, but it is what it is. Well, one night I was talking to Lana. I was like, when me and Danvers started this, I was really hoping, to start a Christian band. And she looks up at me and she goes, "You believe in God?" I was like, "Yeah." "Do you believe in God?" And I say it like that because I got a lot of ridicule ever since I, fully committed. In every way, when someone would ask, "Oh, Terran the Bible banger, Terran the whatever," and she looks at me and she goes, "Yeah. How do you believe in God now?" And I'm like, "I have for a while," and I kind of told her my general testimony, and she was like, "Okay." And then I look at her and I'm like, "Do you want to pray with me?" It was late at night. Oh, and we were roommates at this time. Me, her, 2 other people. She looks at me and she's like, "Sure." So we prayed together that night, and looking back, it was like, oh man, freaking romantic. I mean, obviously at the time we weren't doing it for romance or anything, but I love the fact that that was the kind of the solidification in my mind that's like, oh yeah, I want this chick. And I guess within the next couple of days, she was asking around to see if I was a believer in Christ or if I was just trying to get in her pants. So there is that, which is why she was so hesitant, which was kind of funny. So that's how I met my wife. She went to high school with my older brother.
All right. So where would you say everything is today?
In association with God?
Yeah.
God rules.
Okay. All right. So you're married now how long?
Married now. Wait, for how long?
Yeah.
7 years? 8 years? 7 or 8 years.
Okay.
Two 2011 was when we got married. 8 years. 8 years.
Okay.
Math.
All right. And you got a couple kids? And,
2 kids, Zaris and Avon.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so you're pretty happy, I'm guessing, with how...
The majority of my life, I feel, and when I say majority, it's because, everyone has the...
Yeah, you're young yet. You still got a
there's
lot
that
to
too.
see what's going to play out. But yeah,
But I'm very satisfied with my life. I'm more satisfied probably now than I ever have been. Surrounding myself with Jesus and what He wants for me and His will. Involved with the church. And the reason why I say the church rather than a church is, which I would hope others believe. It is what it is. The church is all of believers in Christ, not just segments. And as we, whatever, regardless, I understand we fight over situations in it, but that doesn't make us any less a church. Yeah. Yeah.
So if someone were to ask you today, what's the best reason you could give me for following Jesus, what would you tell them?
Well, the best reason is not to go to hell. That's what I would say. That's probably not the best thing to say, but that is what I would say. Outside of that, because your life will be so much more fulfilled than it ever has been. And it sounds cliche, but again, it's true. And it does sound cliche. Yeah.
That's good.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Life outside of Christ kind of sucks.
Yeah, it does.
And really, that's the purpose of what we're doing here is, hearing about people's stories, hearing about how God has changed people's lives, and you've got a good story, and the cool thing is you and your wife are going to get to be the first people to tell your stories on this iTestimony channel that we're doing.
But I'll always know I was number one.
So, all right. Anything else you'd like to say before we end it?
Well, God is great. Trusting Him is the best thing that would ever. And I suppose, wide is the path that leads to destruction, and many go therein. But narrow is the path that leadeth to righteousness, and few be there who find it. I'll end with that.
Truth. All right.